Welcome to Lowdown Lockdown. It's Sunday evening, it's 6:30, and welcome and thank you very much for joining. It's a nice day out there, so I hope you've been enjoying the weather. It's been a difficult week for many, trying to cope with the hot weather and having the restrictions, but I hope they are being lifted from tomorrow, and we're going to cover that in detail when we deal with the boxing side. But before I start off today, I think it's very important that we give our condolences to the poor young man who died in America. This thing has to stop. There's been masses of looting, violence and everything else which isn't any good, obviously not helped by the president over there. But I think that it's very, very important that America gets a grip on this, and these people that are inflicting this sort of punishment just because of race, they need to be dealt with, and I hope they will. Very crackly as it, Clive. Okay, I'm trying my best today because I don't have with me today the girls that normally help me. They're not here, so I can't actually get all the help that I normally get, so we're going to do our best to muddle through today. We'll be back to normal next week. Let's just start off first of all with the markets on the week. Stock markets on the whole have risen a little bit. Our clients once again have had another good week. It's 9 weeks out of 10 that we've seen positive results, and things are going very well. And markets, as I cover week on week with you, is something that is very important. It isn't just about going online and investing in your own shares and trying to do it yourself, because 9 times out of 10 that goes wrong, even if it does for a very short term go right. And secondly, we're going to look at the fact that people go online and they buy very cheap trackers and cheap funds, but with investing your money, it's important to get the right advice, the right funds, and things do change as you go along. So that's really important to take on board. Before I go into the financial side of things, which then we're going to cover the new government rules, just a word about the British Boxing Board of Control. And the British Boxing Board of Control, I'm going to keep the questions coming in as we go. The British Boxing Board of Control have brought out guidance which says that trainers can now train their boxers, but ideally outside, ideally at a 2-metre distance, and no sparring allowed. So let's deal with that and the queries that I've had when I've spoken to trainers. They've said, how can we keep a 2-metre distance if we're doing pads? Yes, the body may be at 2-metre distance, but the fists will not be at a 2-metre distance. So you have a problem there. And secondly, when you consider that in 6 weeks' time, the shows are projected to start. Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn are working between the mid to end of July, and there is no sparring. I do appreciate that there's a lot of people breaking the rules out there. I think that's probably what else can people do if they're going to fight? And it's something that I had a problem with when they announced July in the first place. I've been told from a source that apparently sparring is going to be allowed at the earliest from the middle of June. So that then means that some fighters officially that are due to fight may only have 4 weeks to try and get sparring. And you know, it's not going to be easy to get sparring because you haven't got a lot of boxers preparing to fight. So it's going to be very difficult. And I did have a problem with this June comeback, the July comeback dates in the first place. I did feel it'd be better wait until September. And I think it's a bit of an issue. I think it's just conflicting messages. I would understand the board's rules if boxing wasn't being suggested to come back in July, because it makes no sense. How can you have a boxer that should only train outside of his gym and cannot spar, and yet 6 weeks from now he could be in an 8-round fight? I just don't understand it, and I think really we shouldn't have been starting in July, and I think that's the point. And again, we may well not do, and I think there's a question already that we've got in that I'm going to deal with from David Evans, that I'm going to deal with that, and that's going to come across to the issue about the sanctioning and what they are doing. Steve Kipps has chipped in as well. I will deal with these as I go through. Okay, let's go through. The government have, despite my misgivings about a lot of what they are doing, They have extended the scheme for the self-employed, which I think was needed. That's 3 more months now for the self-employed. That's from June, July and August. Instead of getting 80% of your profits, you will get 70% of your profits. And just a reminder that if you haven't claimed for the first 3 months of the self-employed allowance, you have until the 13th of July to claim for your first 3 months. And that will be, so if you haven't done it yet, go and do it, go and register and go and claim. If you, for the second batch, it's likely to be July time that you can claim, and you will receive your money in August. As far as the furloughing is, for the furloughing for employees, they have done a taper down. It's going to include part-time furloughing so people can go back. July is as normal. August is normal, except that the employer will have to pay the pensions and the national insurance. September will be 70% of salary, and October will be 60% of salary. So from that point of view, what you've got is an extension to the furloughing, and if an employee works 2 days, then they would expect the employer only to claim for the 3 days. I think you and I know that most people out there might not necessarily do that, but that is the actual law, and that's what should be adhered to. Okay, John Power, thank you for the question. I'll come back and deal with that in a bit. So, let's go back to the first question that we had today, because we've got a few questions here. I don't think there's, so if there's any other questions you've got, boxing, financial, just fire them in and I'll deal with them as I can. Question number 1, David Evans. Do you think the lockdown measures are being rushed to take the pressure off the Cummings fiasco? Without a doubt, yes. There is no doubt that you shouldn't be easing restrictions without a track and trace system in place, and we all know that the track and trace system is not in place, and most of the people have been sitting doing nothing for the last week. It appears that what has happened is when Boris Johnson tried to shut it down, it was just met with day after day of new announcements about football, today about the horse racing tomorrow, about the easing of restrictions, and it's basically to try, it's a political move, to try and take people's eye off the Dominic Cummings saga, because all they want to do, for whatever reason, is protect Cummings beyond anything else. And whether you consider that that is the right or the wrong thing to do, that is their strategy. So I think without a doubt that's the case, and there are issues, and going forward with the fact that is the lockdown coming out too early. We have more deaths on an average today of the last week than we had when we locked down, and I accept that the longer term trend is down. The last 4 days the trend is not down, the actual trend is slightly up. So I think that this is totally governed now by political moves rather than what you believe is right for the country. And again, I'm not here to give political view on anything. I think what you've got to understand here is most of the moves that any government does of any party is governed towards what they are trying to achieve. Steve Kipps, farcical, and how can the board sanction bouts with minimal preparation, and they allege that they have the boxer's health as #1 priority? I think that's a question that should be directed to Robert Smith, but from my point of view, I agree. I just don't see this at all. I don't understand, and it makes no sense. We know when we go for a new boxer hearing that we are asked to produce a training diary, rightfully so, and they want to see the boxers in full camp for 8, 10, 12 weeks before that. And now we're going into televised fights with very, very short preparation. This is a dangerous sport. Obviously the board have got their reasoning. It's wrong. Like you, Steve, we subscribers to the board, we pay, we're members, we've got various licenses with them, and it would be interesting to see somebody ask these questions, because Steve says he never answers difficult questions, because this is a question that should be asked directly to the board. But I totally agree. Let's have a look at the next question. Questions. You see what I'm saying? When I deal with it, it's so difficult. Karina, the Chancellor now. Let's deal with John Power. John Power asked 2 questions. Can his 13-year-old son go in a gym? well, not officially at the moment. And can his boxing club claim compensation? Well, they can claim compensation if, or they could have claimed a £10,000 allowance if they are not, if they've had they're paying rates or not paying rates, and they come under the grant system for the rating. So if and I know many gyms that have had £10,000 given to them because their businesses are of a small size and they do not pay business rates or council tax. Karina, the Chancellor announced this week that the furlough scheme will gradually be phased out. We have covered that, and for August employers have to contribute, we've covered that. If the events and hospitality interest, for example, still can't open for quite a while, or only partially open, is that going to continue to fuel recession, as more people will be able to work and claim universal credit? Well, yes, I think what you've got here, do you anticipate taxes being higher long term to compensate for furlough and higher unemployment? Yes, taxes have got to be higher. I covered that last week about the taxes, about the way that the government can fund the just write down a remember question. I'll try to get back to that in a minute. So I apologise because I'm on my own this week doing it. Ramez, could you repeat your question for me, because I've missed it on the way, so I was dealing with Karina's second part and I missed it, so could you just repost that for me? So yes, of course, for the hospitality industry, but the way they're going, the way that the government are going, they're likely, in my opinion, just to open up July time. I think, irrelevant to pretty much what the death rate's going to be, I think you're going to see businesses just open, and I think they're just going to go. I think they're winging a prayer it. So yes, I think there's definitely going to be more universal credit, but if the businesses, then there'll be less damage. And I honestly believe that the strategy now is to say, well, let's just get back to work and do what we have to do. There will be no matter what happens here, in my opinion, there will be no other lockdown at all. Ramez's question was about purse bids. What's going to happen to all the purse bids? Very, very difficult when you've only really got 2 promoters that can promote. So if you put a purse bid out, yeah, it's 100% right. There will be very few promoters bidding, and that's the point. The John Power, I think that's a problem, because I've got a boxer that's in position for a purse bid. Dion Juma is due to fight Richard Riakporhe, and the board could put that out to purse bids. But from my position, where we'd normally get sponsors and funding to compete to make sure that he gets the right money, we'll be going in with a gun without any bullets in it. So the problem that you've got is it makes it very difficult for promoters that don't have backing, or managers that don't have backing and can't stage the shows, to compete in the purse bids, which is going to mean that your boxer's going to get less money. I think it's a real difficulty, and I don't even imagine the board have even contemplated how to deal with this yet. And I think that's something we're going to have to watch, because it's going to be very difficult. What are they going to do with a boxer who's got a title, who's not a mainstream promoter's fighter? What's going to happen? Is the boxer going to be forced, or try to be forced, into accepting an unacceptable contract by a bigger promoter? Who knows? It's going to be very difficult, but the board do need to protect those boxers that could technically be exploited and fight for little money. So it's something that I think we will take up with the board, but I think they've got enough on their plate at the moment with trying to get boxing resumed. But these are definitely things that we will be taking up with the board as we go on. John Powell, where can amateurs claim 10,000? Right, you basically go online and you go into your local government website. Because your local government will have, we're Central Bedfordshire here, whatever and go and see if you can claim. But you have to be eligible for rates, and you have to be eligible for that. If you have got a problem, then ring up your local council, and they will direct you through to the right person who will tell you if you are eligible. So that's really what I would suggest you do, rather than a link, because a link doesn't help. If you're not sure, then ring them up and they will tell you if you are allowed to claim for that. Let's have a look. Now. Apologies again, I'm having to catch up. If we've got any more comments here today. I mean, it's going to be a nice day. I didn't expect there to be many views live. I think people will watch it afterwards, but as far as there doesn't appear any more questions here today, so it may be a very shortened version. See, Simon Roberts is watching, who is head security alert, who are the top, and Colin Henry, my friends who are the top security firm in boxing. Again, those security guys that work, they must be really struggling. It's very difficult for them because most of the security guys I'd imagine are employed on a show-by-show basis, don't have a contract, so it's going to be very difficult for them to get paid, as it is for some of the people out there who have escaped the system. And one of the things that I will say about the government's system, which is it's not catching everybody, but do I actually believe, as Karina said before, that we will have as deep a recession as is predicted? No, I don't, primarily because with interest rates so low, and the government are likely to keep them low, and are likely to use that to make the government's borrowing much cheaper. They may not have to raise taxes as much as they would have normally initially, so it would allow us to get back on board before they start hitting us. That's a really good question from Alan. Following on from Ramez's question, could the board have a minimum bid which has to be met? And that's a really good idea, because if they don't, then I think boxers could get financially exploited, and I think that's important, that they could go through an English title or a British title or a Commonwealth title and say, look, what's the lowest that's acceptable really for a fight like this to be fought, and if a promoter won't pay that, then that fight doesn't, gets held. And I think that is really fair. Hi Dwayne, how you doing? I spoke to you for a while. Dwayne Sinclair, light heavyweight, who works, good friend of Joshua Boatsy. Dwayne's in. Yeah, I think that the board should actually do something like that. I think, and that's going to be something that I think that a lot of us should take up with the board, and that's something that I will plan to do. But I haven't spoken to other promoters like Steffi Ball, Carl Greaves, who are basically, Steve Wood, who are basically in the same position that I am to a certain extent. And I think it's very important that we, that we all get together and make sure that we bring enough pressure, I don't want to say pressure, but bring enough to the board to actually ensure that that they do the right thing. As far as markets are concerned, going for the following week, I do expect stock markets tomorrow to rise early morning. Last week the markets were doing very well and they were pulled back at the end. The one thing that's holding back the markets at the moment is actually the Hong Kong situation, and that's causing immense problems around the world, with the Hong Kong stock market really struggling with the intervention of China there, and that's causing a problem because for the first 3 days last week, markets are still reacting well to positive news of the lockdown being relaxed and everything else. But the big risk, as I've always said to you, is that second waves come across the world. If the second wave comes, it will have an impact on markets and values, but if that doesn't come, markets are responding very positively. And what I would say once again, the key to making money in this market is having fund manager, the appropriate fund manager, who can asset allocate in terms of sector and also geographical location. And it's not about just picking shares. And those people that are out there picking shares, I had a client of mine who had, and he did his own thing as well as what we do. We invest a lot of money. We put 50,000 into the market in February. It's worth about 20,000 now. And he said to me, "You've always told me this for many years. I thought I'd have a go," and he's now just realised what an error it was. But we've got another question here, John. Should boxing have a union? What sort of union are we talking about? There used to be a boxers' union that Barry McGuigan set up, and obviously Barry's ended up having absolute issues with his boxers. Not that he's done anything wrong, but there is a boxers' union set up. I think there should be a managers' union. Now, if there was a union, if there was something out there, a boxing managers' union should be set up to protect the managers from getting stitched up by people that are not involved in the business. My pet hate of as a manager are people masquerading of people masquerading as managers who aren't really managers or are untouchable by the board. So I think that is one thing I want to deal with. As far as the boxers union is concerned, it's very, very difficult because the problem is that each promoter in boxing has a different type of contract, and I'm not going to. Some contracts are fair, and some contracts are very unfair. So what does a union do? A union, do they represent the boxers? Well, the boxer, if you've got a good manager, then the manager, a manager would then represent the boxer. I accept that most managers are not capable, but some are, and it's just the job of a boxer to get a good manager. But I think the management side, as John Powell said, the manager union definitely does need sorting. There needs to be a union to stop other managers coming in and to assist managers when they get stitched up by boxers who try to break contracts for no apparent reason. And that, I know you can go to the board, but I can discuss that another time about what happens when a boxer tries to break a contract and the actual time that a manager has to give up to try and protect themselves, even if they're in the right. And I've had to deal with that before myself. But that's a question for another day. Colin Henry, is it possible for the smaller promoters sell pay-per-view fights like of YouTube or small cable companies? They would not need anywhere than numbers to give a return to the fighters. It's a really good question, but the problem is not enough people will pay for small ball boxing. I would imagine, and I'm not even joking, if we put up a show and we sold it on, we filmed it and sold it on YouTube, on our platform, you would not get enough viewers to make it worthwhile. If you had a big platform and you had the backing of a big company who could promote it, then you may be able to do that. But that's too big a gamble. So what you would need to make that work is a company to invest in a promotional show, put money behind it, and therefore help the promoter doing it. But the promoter couldn't fund that themselves. The risk would be too great. And I'll give you an example of this. Nick Hennessy promoted Joseph Parker against Hughie Fury on a pay-per-view to the World Heavyweight title fight. And my understanding was he got about, and I might be wrong, but it's something like 500 views for a world heavyweight title fight. So he didn't actually watch it. I've not seen evidence that worked. Chris, do you think China wants a war? Reports this week say they're getting ready for one. I'm not a politician. That's way beyond my remit. I hope not. I think that's the last thing the world needs is a war. But it's not, the situation with China and Hong Kong isn't good. I think all we should be doing is uniting to defeat this virus. But I hope China don't want a war, because that won't be good for the world. More money for boxers who fight for titles, 50,000 guaranteed. You can't give boxers £50,000 guaranteed for titles. 50,000 for somebody fighting for a British flyweight title or super flyweight title. It doesn't generate, those weights don't generate that money. Whereas a heavyweight fight could generate a bit more. 50,000 is no, it's a British title. Some British titles aren't worth that, and it's all about. I mean, I've had fighters. I know fighters that have fought for British titles for £12,500, believe it or not. None of mine, but I can get a very big name who told me, a massive name in boxing, who fought one for a British title for £12,500. But yeah, and I think now pay John will fall. With what's going on, the pay of boxers is going to fall. Alan, do you think the riots in the USA will impact the Dow Jones? Possibly, if they continue. If they subside in the next few days, then possibly not. But America is very volatile with Trump. It only takes a tweet from Donald Trump to impact the Dow Jones. I don't think at the moment that's an issue, but I think it could be if it gets a lot worse. I think that the problem that you've got when you've got someone like Trump in power, whether you like him or don't like him, is his behaviour is so erratic that it can cause issues around the world. And you know, with China at the moment, if he starts stepping up the rhetoric for China and he starts telling everybody he's going to shoot people who are losing shops, I think you could have more civil unrest, and then that could cause a problem. But let's hope not. Let's hope that doesn't happen. and let's hope, as Chris feels that there may be a war in China, that doesn't happen also. But I think that really wraps it up for this week. So I think going forward, as far as stock markets are concerned, I think make sure you're in the right allocation. I think make sure you've got the right fund manager, that you're investing smartly, you're taking the right advice. And I think I still say the same thing. I think in 3 or 4 years' time, people will look back and see this as a buying opportunity. A lot of my clients have bought and invested over the last 2 months, and they have made very, very good money already. And I think when we do look back, we will see it. Oh, John said, footballers get 50,000 a week kicking the ball, boxers put life on the line. Yeah, but I'm afraid you don't get 60,000 people watching a boxing match every Saturday full of teams. It's about money, and boxing doesn't generate the money that football does. Sky gives the football a lot more money than they give boxing, and when you get 6 million or whatever it is at a gate of a football match, then I think that's why footballers get more. I totally agree, boxers deserve more, but you can only get what the market determines. Colin, can you explain how it works when previously your fighters promoted their fights? Why is it not the same to promote the fights online? What is the difference on comparison? Well, the difference is if a boxer is selling a ticket to go, putting a boxing show on is 20 grand, plus you have to pay for an opponent and everything else. If a boxer sells 100 tickets at the show, they'll be selling them for say £40, which means they generate £4,000. If you put something online, the most you can charge is £4.99. You're not going to sell them for £40. So even if they sold 100, they're going to generate £400. It doesn't make it pay. It's because people won't pay the same money that they will pay to attend as they would online, and that is the problem. That's the difference. It's purely, I'd imagine some of the people would pay to watch it online, but not so many. People like the event out. They like going out for a drink beforehand, going into the box and going out for a after fight party afterwards. You don't get that watching from home, so the actual amount of people supporting that will reduce. Just to see now. Andre Santa's just come in now. Andre Santa, just talk about Andre. New fighter I've signed is with Steve Kipps. Steve Kipps is, I've covered an underrated trainer, one of those in the country that I think has got great places to go. But Andre Santa is a hard-hitting super featherweight who's going to go a long way. So Andre Santa is a name to watch out for. So I hope I've covered as much financial and boxing stuff as I can this week. Hopefully next week I'll go back to having the help of my young ladies who are not able to help today. Have a safe week. Be very careful with what's going on out there. As I say, I don't think the lockdown has been. I don't think boxing has been. I just saw another comment come through. Yeah, I don't think the release has happened because of medical science. I think it's happened because of the economy. So just make sure you all stay safe and look after yourselves. If you are around on Monday night, tomorrow night we have a very interesting Instagram live show, because we do that on 7 o'clock on Monday and Wednesdays. We have Richie Gray, former pro boxer, who's been the best boxer for attracting sponsors. So if you're a boxer out there, join in tomorrow and listen to what Richie Gray has to say. Simon Dowling, press photographers on. Leon McKenzie, former professional footballer and professional boxer, and he's on tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Leon has so much to say. He's a very interesting character and a nice man to boot. So tune in at 7. And Miles Shinkwin, former English light heavyweight champion, who used to fight under the Frank Warren banner as well, and then I managed the latter part of his career. A hell of a lot to say from Miles. So we've got a really exciting show tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Instagram Live, Goodwin Boxing. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching today, and all of you stay safe. And thanks a lot. John McCullum's just joined in. Hi John, hope you're well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you next week at 6:30 on here. Bye for now.